If you don't control your mind, the world will control it for you. That is the truth most people never hear, and even fewer ever accept. Every decision you make, every emotion you feel, every problem you try to solve is shaped by the quality of your thinking. And yet, most people never train their thinking. They react, they assume, they guess. They let biases, fears, and impulses decide for them. And when the mind is untrained, life becomes harder than it needs to be. This is not an audiobook about getting smarter. This is an audiobook about getting sharper. Intelligence is potential. Critical thinking is a skill. And like every skill, it can be trained, strengthened, refined, and weaponized. When you train your mind, you gain a kind of advantage that lasts your entire life. You make better choices, you avoid traps, you see patterns sooner, and you respond to challenges with clarity instead of chaos. Most people think fast, but think poorly. They rely on shortcuts, emotional impulses, and assumptions. They jump to conclusions. They defend beliefs they never examined. They talk before understanding. They react before evaluating. And they confuse fast thinking with good thinking. But leaders, strategists, innovators, they think differently. They slow down internally, even when everything around them moves fast. They ask better questions. They check their biases. They separate facts from feelings. They build conclusions on reality, not habit. And because of that, they win. This audiobook exists for one purpose: to help you train your brain to outsmart any situation, calmly, logically, and consistently. Not by memorizing theories, not by learning complex academic models, but by understanding how your mind actually works, how it misleads you, and how to rebuild your thinking from the inside out. In the next 90 minutes, you will learn how to see the world more clearly and think with strength, structure, and precision. You will learn 10 core mental skills that transform your ability to analyze problems, avoid mistakes, and make decisions with confidence. These skills aren't reserved for genius-level people. They are tools any disciplined person can master. We begin with the first skill: observation, not the passive kind. True observation, where you notice what others overlook, catch the details that matter, and slow down enough to see the truth beneath the noise. Then we move into bias, the invisible force that tricks your mind and distorts your thinking without you noticing. You'll learn to identify your blind spots before they cost you. From there, you'll train one of the most powerful thinking tools ever invented: first principles thinking. This is how you break any problem down to its core truth and rebuild smarter solutions from the ground up. You will learn to question assumptions, challenge patterns, and separate reality from habit. Then we'll go deeper into critical thinking, asking sharper questions, choosing actions with clarity, evaluating information with logic instead of emotion, and creating mental structures that help you stay grounded during chaos. You'll learn how to predict outcomes, map consequences, and make decisions based on strategy, not fear. You'll also train the ability to detach emotionally, to create space between a feeling and an action. This single ability can save careers, relationships, and opportunities. When your emotions no longer control your thinking, your life becomes calmer and your choices become smarter. You'll learn to recognize blind spots, your own and the world's. You'll learn methods used by analysts, negotiators, problem solvers, and leaders to navigate complexity with confidence. And finally, you'll learn to think long-term, to stop playing the short game, to think like someone who builds, anticipates, and adapts. This audiobook is not entertainment. It's training, it's structure, it's discipline for the mind. And if you listen fully, not casually, but intentionally, your thinking will begin to change. You will notice yourself pausing instead of reacting, questioning instead of assuming, analyzing instead of panicking. You will start to see solutions where others see problems, opportunities where others see obstacles, clarity where others feel confusion. By the time we reach the end, you will understand how to think with precision, how to remove noise from your decisions, how to analyze any situation, and how to trust your mind under pressure. These skills will help you in your career, your relationships, your decisions, your conflicts, and every difficult situation you face. This is your journey into deeper thinking, into sharper perception, into mental strength. Welcome to the training. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Master the skill of strategic observation. Most people don't fail because they're not smart. Most people fail because they don't see. That's the quiet truth nobody likes to admit. People rush into conversations, decisions, commitments, and conflicts with a mind that's half asleep. Half focused, half aware, half honest. They miss the tone that reveals someone's true intention. They miss the inconsistency that exposes a lie. They miss the tiny signal that could have saved them from a bad decision or opened a door they didn't know existed. And when they look back, they say, "I had a feeling, but I didn't pay attention." That single sentence is the cost of an untrained mind. Life doesn't punish the uninformed. Life punishes the unaware. When you move through the world without observation, you move like someone walking in the dark. Not because you're weak, but because you're blind to what's right in front of you. You trust people too quickly. You judge too slowly. You assume too easily. You react too emotionally. And the worst part is that you don't notice this happening until the damage is done. When you cannot observe clearly, you cannot think clearly. And when you cannot think clearly, you cannot choose wisely. But here is the principle that changes everything. Observation is not seeing. Observation is understanding. It's the quiet, disciplined act of noticing reality before your mind distorts it. It's slowing down the first few seconds of every situation so you can register the environment, the energy, the motives, and the signals. It's learning to separate what you want to be true from what is actually true. And it's recognizing that clarity isn't a gift, it's a trained muscle. Picture two people stepping into the same room. One person sees the surface, the conversation, the smiles, the setting. The other sees the truth beneath it all, the tension in the shoulders, the hesitation behind the words, the power dynamics in the body language, the micro shift in tone when a certain name is mentioned. One person makes decisions quickly but poorly. The other moves slower at first but faster afterward because their choices are informed, grounded, intentional. They're living in the same moment, but one of them is playing checkers while the other is playing chess. The difference is not IQ. The difference is training. And your training begins with breaking the habit of moving too fast. Before you react, pause for one breath. That breath resets your mind from autopilot to awareness. It clears out assumptions and opens space for clarity. Most people enter situations already 3 steps ahead in their thoughts. And because of that, they miss everything happening right now. You will not outsmart any situation if you don't fully see the situation. Once you reset, your job is simple. Notice what others ignore. Notice what's present, what's missing, what's exaggerated, what's avoided. Notice who speaks with certainty and who speaks with fear. Notice who interrupts, who deflects, who watches, who listens. These are not random details. They are data. They reveal patterns, motives, risks, and opportunities. The more you see, the better you think. Your next step is to train your brain to spot patterns. Patterns are the fingerprints of truth. When someone's behavior repeats, when a problem keeps reappearing, when a tone resurfaces in multiple conversations, there is a story beneath it. Most people ignore these stories because they want quick solutions, not deep understanding. But if you want to think sharply, you must become the kind of person who tracks the rhythm beneath the noise. Patterns show you what's coming long before it arrives, and when you think you've observed everything, Challenge yourself to notice one more thing, one extra detail, one inconsistency, one shift in energy, one contradiction between words and actions. That single detail often changes your entire interpretation. It turns confusion into clarity, hesitation into confidence, uncertainty into direction. But observation becomes powerful only when you separate facts from interpretations. What you see, hear, or directly witness is a fact. What you think it means is an interpretation. Most people merge the two, then wonder why their conclusions are flawed. When you learn to say, "This is what happened," versus "This is what I think it means," you stop letting emotion and bias hijack your reasoning. You become grounded instead of reactive. You think with structure instead of chaos. A strong mind is not a mind that reacts quickly. A strong mind is a mind that sees clearly. To build this strength, create a daily observation ritual. At the end of each day, write down 3 things you noticed, 3 details, 3 behaviors, 3 signals, 3 patterns. Not judgments, not stories, not interpretations, just what you saw. This simple practice rewires your awareness. It forces your brain to stay awake. It sharpens your perception like a blade honed over time. And when a moment truly matters, when you feel pressure, uncertainty, tension, or confusion, ask yourself 3 grounding questions. What am I missing because I'm moving too fast? What assumption am I making that I have not verified? What detail, if noticed, would change everything? These questions disrupt emotional thinking. They demand clarity. They pull you out of instinct and into intelligence. They remind you that perspective is earned, not assumed. Because the truth is this: you cannot solve a problem you don't fully see. You cannot judge a person you barely observe. You cannot make a wise choice from incomplete information. You cannot navigate complexity with a mind that only sees the surface. Observation is your first weapon. It is the starting point of every great decision, every strategic move, every act of critical thinking. When your observation sharpens, everything else sharpens. Your analysis, your judgment, your intuition, your timing, your confidence. See deeper than others. Notice what they dismiss. Pay attention to what they overlook. That is how you outsmart any situation. That is how you elevate your mind. That is how you begin. Chapter 2. Break free from cognitive bias. Before it controls your thinking, your brain doesn't always want the truth. Your brain wants comfort. That's why even intelligent people fall into the same traps again and again. They believe they're thinking logically when, in reality, their mind is secretly bending reality to protect their ego, their identity, or their emotions. And the worst part, they don't even notice it happening. This is the quiet power of cognitive bias, an invisible force that distorts your thinking, shifts your judgment, and convinces you that your first impression is always right. Your assumptions are always valid, and your feelings are always facts. Most people lose to their own mind long before they lose to the world. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack awareness of their own biases. And that's the hidden pain. You can't fight what you don't see. You can't correct a belief you never question. You can't improve decisions you assume are already perfect. Bias creates a mental autopilot that feels comfortable but leads to predictable mistakes. Wrong relationships, wrong opportunities, wrong conclusions, wrong battles. When bias runs the show, clarity disappears. Here is the truth people avoid confronting. Your first reaction is rarely the right one. Your first interpretation is usually incomplete. Your first judgment is almost always biased. But bias is not the enemy. Unexamined bias is. The principle at the core of this chapter is simple. A trained mind questions its own mind. Strong thinkers don't trust every thought their brain produces. They examine it. They hold it up to the light. They test it against reality. They understand that the brain is designed to take shortcuts, preserve energy, and protect identity, not to seek truth. Truth requires effort. Accuracy requires humility. Clear thinking requires discipline. To understand bias, picture this. You walk into a conversation with someone who reminds you of a person who once betrayed you. Without realizing it, your mind begins filtering everything through suspicion. A neutral tone sounds hostile. A simple question feels like an attack. A disagreement feels like disrespect. Nothing actually happened. Your past happened, and your brain projected it onto the present moment. Or imagine the opposite. You like someone instantly. They smile, and your brain rewards them with trust they haven't earned. You overlook red flags. You interpret arrogance as confidence, manipulation as charm, selfishness as strength. Not because they fooled you, but because you fooled yourself. Bias isn't loud. Bias whispers. It whispers in the form of familiarity, fear, pride, insecurity, comfort. It whispers through your beliefs, your past experiences, your hidden wounds, your identity, your desires. And unless you train yourself to detect these whispers, they shape your thinking without your permission. So how do you break free? You start by slowing down your conclusions. When your mind jumps to an instant judgment, pause. That pause is where intelligence begins. Your brain loves speed because speed feels certain. But certainty is not truth. Certainty is comfort dressed as confidence. When you slow your pace of interpretation, you make room for accuracy, nuance, and depth. Then begin identifying your default biases. Everyone has predictable patterns. You trust people who look like someone you liked in the past. You distrust people who remind you of someone who hurt you. You believe information that confirms your existing beliefs. You reject information that challenges your worldview. You assume you already understand a situation after seeing only the surface. You think you're objective while everyone else is biased. These patterns are not flaws. They are untrained reflexes. But once you learn to name them, they lose their power. Next, you learn to break the cycle with one powerful technique: the reverse lens. Whenever you feel certain, ask, "What if I'm wrong?" Whenever you feel defensive, ask, "What am I trying to protect?" Whenever you feel superior, ask, "What am I refusing to learn?" This simple reversal reveals blind spots your mind tries to hide. It exposes assumptions you never questioned. It pulls emotional bias into the light, where logic can finally examine it. And the moment you see your bias, you become free from it. To reinforce this awareness, practice separating perception from interpretation. Perception: what you actually observe. Interpretation: the meaning your mind adds. Most people mix the two so tightly that they can't distinguish reality from reaction. But when you isolate the raw facts before allowing emotion or belief to enter the equation, your judgment becomes cleaner, sharper, and far more reliable. Train your mind to say, "This is what happened. This is what I felt. This is what I think it means." These are not the same thing. This separation alone improves thinking more than any IQ booster, any productivity hack, any motivational speech. It turns emotional conclusions into logical evaluations. Finally, create a daily reflection ritual that exposes bias. At the end of the day, ask yourself 3 grounding questions. What belief did I defend today without evidence? What did I judge too quickly? What truth would I have seen if I weren't protecting my ego? These questions are uncomfortable, and that's exactly why they work. Bias hides in comfort. Growth hides in discomfort. If you want to think like a strategist instead of a reactor, you must choose the discomfort that leads to clarity over the comfort that leads to blindness. Because the real danger is not being wrong. The real danger is believing you can't be wrong. When you believe everything your mind tells you, you start defending bias as if it were truth. But when you learn to question your own thinking, something powerful happens. You begin making decisions based on reality instead of emotion. You stop projecting your past onto your future. You stop repeating the same mistakes. You stop sabotaging opportunities. You start thinking with structure, not impulse. With clarity, not fear. With intelligence, not ego. A trained mind does not eliminate bias. A trained mind recognizes it faster than it can take control. That is the first step to outsmarting any situation. Until you master your own bias, you cannot trust your own thoughts. And until you can trust your thoughts, you cannot trust your decisions. See your bias. Question your certainty. Challenge your first interpretation. That is how you break free. That is how you begin to think with power. Chapter 3. Think in first principles. Rebuild your mind from the ground up. Most people don't think. They recycle. They repeat what they heard, copy what they were taught, follow what they've seen, and defend beliefs they never examined. They solve problems with borrowed logic. They make decisions with second-hand reasoning, and then they wonder why nothing changes. When the foundation of your thinking is built on assumptions instead of truth, everything you construct collapses the moment life applies pressure. You can't outsmart the world with a mind that only rearranges what it already knows. The pain is simple but brutal. Conventional thinking produces conventional results. You approach problems the same way everyone else does, so you end up stuck where everyone else is stuck. You rely on shortcuts, patterns, intuition, or experience, but not clarity. So you repeat old cycles. You justify bad decisions. You cling to the familiar, and you mistake familiarity for intelligence. Familiarity may feel safe, but it kills innovation, growth, and creative problem solving. If you want to be exceptional, you need a different way of thinking, and that way is first principles. The principle behind first principles thinking is powerful. Don't ask, how do people normally solve this? Ask, what is this at the core? First principles strips away assumptions, habits, traditions, opinions, labels, and noise until you're left with the truth. Pure, unfiltered, non-negotiable truth. Once you understand the core truth, you rebuild from there with clarity and power. It is how innovators think, how problem solvers think, how strategic leaders think. It's the mental equivalent of clearing the entire chessboard and asking, what is the most fundamental truth of this situation? Picture this. Two people are faced with the same challenge. One tries to solve it the way everyone else has, patching symptoms, following a formula, repeating the same methods that failed others. The other shatters the problem down to its raw elements. What is actually happening? What is actually needed? What is actually true versus assumed? That person isn't smarter. They're cleaner in their thinking. They're not trapped inside the walls of what should work. They're building from what must work. One person repairs the surface. The other rebuilds the foundation. To think in first principles, you begin by identifying assumptions. Every situation carries assumptions, things you believe without realizing you believe them. That's just how it works. That's how things are done. That's impossible. That can't be changed. These statements are mental cages disguised as logic, and the moment you accept them, you limit your intelligence. Start questioning everything that feels obvious. Obvious answers hide the deepest blindness. Once you break assumptions apart, reduce the problem to fundamental truths. Ask yourself, what is the essence of this? What remains true even if everything else is stripped away? What are the raw components that actually matter? When you find those pieces, the problem loses its complexity. Complexity isn't intelligence, it's confusion in disguise. From there, begin rebuilding using logic, not habit. Your goal isn't to be clever. Your goal is to be correct. You form solutions based on elemental truth, not borrowed belief. This is how you find smarter strategies, clearer decisions, and breakthrough outcomes. This mindset becomes even more powerful when you pair it with emotional clarity. Most people think they're overthinking, but they're actually overfeeling. Their emotions shape their conclusions before their logic even begins. First principles. Thinking forces you to separate emotion from truth. Just because something feels true doesn't mean it is. Just because something scares you doesn't mean it's impossible. Just because something is familiar doesn't mean it's right. A disciplined mind doesn't bow to emotion. It listens to emotion, but builds on truth. To train this skill, begin with a simple practice. Whenever you face a challenge, ask 3 core questions. What do I know for sure? What am I assuming? What is the real objective? These 3 questions destroy confusion. They expose the story your mind is inventing. They reveal the foundation underneath your fear or frustration. And they unlock a version of your thinking that is sharper, calmer, and far more accurate. Next, break the problem into pieces. Every complex situation is just a collection of smaller truths. Take them apart. Examine each one. Identify which pieces matter and which pieces are distractions. People fail not because the problem is too big, but because they try to solve all of it at once. First, principles breaks it down until it becomes solvable. Then, rebuild from the ground up. Build solutions that are simple, logical, and rooted in truth. Build without copying the world. Build without relying on outdated beliefs. Build like someone who trusts their reasoning, not tradition. When you rebuild this way, your decisions become sturdier. Your confidence becomes real. Your outcomes become predictable. But thinking in first principles is not just a method, it is an identity. It is the identity of someone who refuses to accept things as they are, simply because they've always been that way. Someone who wants clarity more than comfort. Someone who values truth more than tradition. Someone who chooses intelligence over ego. Your mind becomes powerful the moment you stop treating knowledge as a script and start treating it as a tool. To internalize this mindset, adopt one more practice. Challenge your conclusions. After you decide something, ask, is this conclusion built on truth or assumption? If your answer involves emotion, tradition, or familiarity, it's not first principles. If your answer is rooted in undeniable reality, it is. This habit builds a mind that cannot be manipulated by pressure, opinions, or fear. A mind that doesn't chase shortcuts. A mind that thinks with discipline instead of instinct. And every time you use first principles, you sharpen the gap between average thinking and exceptional thinking. You begin to solve problems faster because you're solving the right problems. You begin to argue less because you're anchored in clarity, not ego. You begin to trust your decisions more because they are built on truth, not noise. You begin to see through complexity like it's glass. A mind that thinks in first principles cannot be deceived by illusions. A mind that thinks in first principles cannot be controlled by assumptions. A mind that thinks in first principles becomes unshakably intelligent. So ask yourself, what truth have I been avoiding because the assumption felt easier? What problem have I been solving the wrong way because I copied someone else's thinking? What limitation have I accepted simply because everyone else did? These questions are uncomfortable. That's why they work. Growth begins where illusions end. Power begins where truth begins. And thinking in first principles is where truth becomes usable. Break the problem, find the core, rebuild from truth. That is how you become a sharper thinker. That is how you outsmart any situation. That is how you rise. Chapter 4. Ask sharper questions. The thinking skill that changes everything. Most people don't lack answers. They lack the right questions. This is why they stay stuck, confused, overwhelmed, or misled. Because the quality of your thinking can never rise above the quality of your questioning. A weak question produces a weak answer. A vague question produces a vague insight. And when your questions are shallow, your decisions will always be shallow. People say they want clarity, but clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. Clarity comes from asking better questions. The truth is simple. Your mind will always give you an answer. It just won't always give you the right one. When you ask poor questions, your brain will invent whatever story feels easiest. It will give you emotional guesses instead of logical conclusions. It will give you old beliefs instead of new understanding. It will give you assumptions dressed as facts. This is the pain most people never catch. They don't realize their confusion comes from the way they question themselves, not from the world around them. A sloppy question creates a sloppy life. A precise question builds a precise mind. Strong thinkers are not defined by how much they know, but by how deeply they ask. They are not trapped by surface-level explanations. They do not assume that the first answer is the full answer. They understand that behind every problem, every behavior, every decision, and every outcome lies a deeper layer of truth waiting to be uncovered. And they know the key to that truth is a sharper question. Picture this. Someone struggles with the same issue over and over. Instead of asking, "Why does this keep happening?" they ask, "Why does this always happen to me?" One question opens a solution. The other traps them in victimhood. Or imagine someone sees an opportunity and asks, "Can I do this?" Instead of, "What would it take for me to do this?" The first question kills possibility. The second builds a pathway. Or think of someone overwhelmed by a challenge. Instead of asking, "How do I fix everything?" they ask, "What's the first part of this I can fix today?" One question creates paralysis. The other creates movement. This is the difference between reactive thinkers and strategic thinkers. Reactors ask questions that reinforce fear. Strategists ask questions that reveal truth. To train this skill, you need to build a habit of questioning reality instead of accepting it automatically. Start by identifying the default questions your mind produces when you face pressure, disappointment, or uncertainty. You'll notice they tend to come from emotion, not clarity. When something goes wrong, most minds instantly ask, "What's wrong with me?" But that question doesn't solve anything. It simply attacks your identity. A smarter question is, what variables actually created this outcome? One question destroys confidence. The other builds intelligence. Then, retrain your mind to use precision-based questioning. Precision questions start with what, why, how, or which. They force the brain to move past emotion and into structure. They disarm bias. They reveal assumptions. They expose blind spots. They turn chaos into data. What am I not seeing yet? What part of this problem is real and what part is invented by fear? What evidence do I have for this conclusion? What alternative explanation makes equal or more sense? How would I approach this if I had no fear at all? What is the simplest version of the truth here? These questions cut through noise like a blade. But the deepest level of questioning comes from the ability to interrogate your own thinking. Ask not only about the world, but about the interpretation your mind is creating. What story am I telling myself right now? Is this a fact or a feeling? What belief is driving this reaction? Who would I be without this assumption? Questions like these force the mind to separate emotion from logic. They break open the mental boxes that shape your behavior. They dissolve the illusions your brain unconsciously builds to protect your identity. Once you learn to challenge your thoughts stop controlling you. Now take this skill into real situations. When someone upsets you, don't ask, "Why are they like this?" Ask, "What might be influencing their behavior that I'm not considering?" When you feel stuck in your career, don't ask, why isn't anything working? Ask, what skill, if mastered, would change everything for me right now? When you fear failure, don't ask, what if this goes wrong? Ask, what if this goes right, and what action would make that more likely? These questions shift your state from helplessness to insight. They transform stress into strategy. They pull you out of emotional spirals and place you into the driver's seat of your thinking. This is how leaders think. This is how problem solvers think. This is how you outsmart situations that overwhelm everyone else. To sharpen this skill further, practice the 3-layer question drill. Layer 1. Ask the surface question. Layer 2. Ask the question beneath that question. Layer 3. Ask the question beneath that truth. For example, surface. Why am I procrastinating? Beneath, what emotion am I avoiding by delaying this task? Deeper, what belief created that emotion in the first place? 3 layers reveal more insight than 30 minutes of overthinking. This method works in conversations too. When someone says something vague or emotional, don't respond to the surface. Ask deeper questions. What do you mean by that? What matters most to you here? What outcome are you hoping for? What part of this is unclear to you? These questions uncover motives, fears, desires, and goals people often hide even from themselves. Asking deeper questions is not about interrogation, it's about illumination. Now, integrate questioning with action. Whenever you face a high-stakes moment, ask, what matters most right now? What decision has the highest long-term benefit? What move puts me in a stronger position tomorrow than today? This turns questioning into strategy. You're no longer thinking just to understand. You're thinking to win. And at the end of the day, reflect with 3 grounding questions. What question did I avoid asking today because the answer scared me? What question would have created clarity? What question do I need to ask tomorrow that will change my direction? These questions pull you toward growth. They build a mind that refuses to stay blind. Because the real power is not in having answers. The real power is in knowing which questions matter. A mind that asks strategically cannot be manipulated. A mind that asks deeply cannot be misled. A mind that asks boldly cannot stay average. Sharpen your questions. Sharpen your clarity. Sharpen your life. That is how you think like a strategist. That is how you outsmart complexity. That is how you rise. Chapter 5. Separate emotion. From analysis. Think clearly under pressure. You cannot think clearly if you feel intensely. This is the truth most people learn too late. Strong emotions, anger, fear, pride, excitement, insecurity, don't just influence your thoughts. They hijack them. They override logic. They distort perception. They turn simple problems into overwhelming ones and turn minor misunderstandings into full-blown conflicts. When emotion takes the wheel, clarity disappears. And that is the hidden pain. Most people lose the battle in their mind long before they lose it in the real world. They panic. They overreact. They assume the worst. They cling to the first explanation their brain offers because it feels urgent, even if it's wrong. They jump to conclusions. They catastrophize. They take things personally that had nothing to do with them. And while their body is in the present, their mind is drowning in imagined futures, unresolved pasts, and emotional storms. Emotion isn't the enemy. Uncontrolled emotion is. The principle is simple. Strong thinkers feel everything, but analyze nothing while feeling it. Emotion is a signal. It gives information about needs, desires, values, and fears. But it was never meant to be the driver of decisions. Emotion is input, not instruction. A disciplined mind doesn't suppress emotion. It separates emotion from interpretation so clarity can return. Picture this. 2 people face the same stressful situation. One feels the pressure rise, their mind speeds up, their voice tightens, and they react instantly, trying to escape discomfort instead of understanding it. The other feels the pressure too, but they don't obey it. They pause. They breathe. They observe their internal storm instead of feeding it. Their calm doesn't come from being emotionless. It comes from being in command. One reacts, the other responds. This difference creates two completely different lives. To think clearly under pressure, you must train the space between feeling and action. That space, tiny as it is your greatest cognitive advantage. It's where logic reappears. It's where choices become visible. It's where emotional storms lose their power. If you never create that space, emotion will make decisions for you. Start with the first practice. Name the emotion, not the story, not the judgment, not the interpretation, just the emotion. I'm angry. I'm anxious. I'm threatened. I'm disappointed. I feel disrespected. When you name an emotion, you take it out of the driver's seat. You acknowledge its presence without letting it overtake your reasoning. Most people feed their emotion with stories. This always happens to me. They don't care. I'm a failure. This will ruin everything. These are not facts. They're emotional narratives. And narratives fuel chaos. By naming the emotion without narrative, you interrupt the cycle. You break the link between feeling and assumption. You give your mind oxygen. Once the emotion is named, move to the next step. Slow the physical response. Your body reacts before your logic does. Racing heart, shallow breathing, tight shoulders, clenched jaw, tunnel vision. If you don't regulate the body, the mind follows it into survival mode. Breathe slowly from the diaphragm. Relax your posture. Drop your shoulders. Lengthen your exhale. These actions tell your nervous system, we are safe. When the body is calm, the brain begins to clear. Next, create separation between emotion and analysis by asking one grounding question. What is the actual problem here? Not the emotional problem, not the imagined problem, not the future problem, the real one. You will be surprised how often your emotion points towards something different than your logic. You may feel angry, but the real issue is unmet expectations. You may feel anxious, but the real issue is lack of information. You may feel hurt, but the real issue is miscommunication. Emotion clouds truth. Analysis reveals it. Then, challenge the emotional interpretation with evidence. Ask, what facts do I actually have? What am I assuming because I feel this way? What else could explain what's happening right now? What would a neutral observer see here? These questions separate reality from reaction. They expose the stories your mind is inventing under pressure. They allow you to evaluate the situation like a strategist, not a panicked observer. Now train the practice that changes everything. Delay your decisions until your emotional temperature drops. If you're angry, don't respond. If you're scared, don't choose. If you're insecure, don't speak. If you're overwhelmed, don't commit. If you're uncertain, don't conclude. What feels urgent under emotion rarely remains urgent under clarity. And the choice you regret the most is the choice you made to escape discomfort rather than solve the problem. Another powerful discipline is reframing the emotion. Ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? What value is being threatened? What fear is being activated? What expectation is being challenged? What part of this has nothing to do with the situation and everything to do with old wounds? Emotion is information about you, not about the world. When you treat it as data, not identity, your thinking becomes far stronger. In high-pressure moments, return to the rule. Feel fully, think lightly, decide slowly. Feel the emotion without judgment so it can move through you instead of controlling you. Think lightly by allowing impressions to exist without clinging to them. Decide slowly so logic can catch up to feeling. At the end of the day, strengthen emotional intelligence with 3 self-audit questions. What emotion controlled me today, and why did I let it? What situation required more logic than I gave it? What moment would have changed if I had paused before reacting? These questions turn emotional episodes into cognitive training. They convert chaos into lessons. They transform reactivity into responsibility. You stop being someone who feels and reacts, and you become someone who feels and leads. Because real strength is not the absence of emotion. Real strength is the ability to feel without losing clarity. A mind that stays intelligent under pressure becomes unstoppable in everyday life. It chooses wisely when others collapse. It thinks clearly when others panic. It remains strategic when others become emotional. Separating emotion from analysis is how you build a mind that cannot be manipulated by stress, fear, ego, or pressure. A mind that doesn't break under intensity. A mind that operates from truth, not from turbulence. Feel deeply, observe calmly, analyze intelligently. This is how you rise above emotional storms. This is how you evolve your thinking. This is how you outsmart any situation. Chapter 6. Build structured thinking. Turn mental chaos into clarity. Most people don't fail because life is complicated. Most people fail because their thinking is. Their mind jumps from one thought to another. They connect unrelated ideas. They mix memories with fears, assumptions with facts, impulses with logic. They chase thoughts instead of organizing them, and then they wonder why decisions feel heavy, why conversations feel confusing, and why problems feel bigger than they are. The truth is simple. Without structure, your mind becomes your own worst enemy. Chaos in your thinking becomes chaos in your life. The painful part is that most people don't even recognize when their thinking becomes chaotic. They feel overwhelmed, so they rush decisions. They feel uncertain, so they cling to the first explanation that feels familiar. They feel stressed, so they see every problem as urgent. They feel pressure, so they follow emotion instead of logic. The brain wants relief, not accuracy, and that's how poor choices are made. But there is a principle that separates average thinkers from exceptional ones. Structured thinking beats fast thinking every time. Structured thinking doesn't mean thinking slowly. It means thinking clearly. It means putting ideas in order instead of letting them collide. It means breaking big problems into small, solvable components. It means guiding your mind instead of letting it wander. When you build a structured mind, you become someone who sees connections others miss, solutions others overlook, and pathways others can't find. Picture 2 people confronted with the same challenge. One tries to solve everything at once. They get overwhelmed by the size of the problem, panic over the unknowns, and drown in mental noise. The other breaks the situation into pieces, identifies priorities, separates noise from facts, and constructs a path forward step by step. One feels defeated. The other takes control. The difference is structure. To build this structure, start with the mental rule that changes everything. Separate what is happening from how you feel about it. Most people mix the two. They think the problem is bigger because they feel overwhelmed. They believe the situation is unfair because they feel hurt. They conclude that the future is hopeless because they feel scared. Feelings are valid, but they are not the blueprint of reality. Structure begins when you pull the emotional layer off the situation and examine the facts cleanly. Once you isolate the facts, organize them, not in your head, on paper, on screen, or in a mental framework you consistently use. Facts scattered in your mind become noise. Facts arranged in order become a plan. The next step is to use pyramid logic, one of the most effective thinking tools ever created. Start with the core truth at the top, then group supporting insights beneath it. Then break those into action-based components. This model forces your mind to organize information instead of juggling it. It turns confusion into hierarchy, and hierarchy creates clarity. For example, when facing a major decision, begin with a single statement. What outcome matters most in the long run? That is the top of the pyramid. Below it, list the key factors that influence that outcome. Below each factor, list the actions you can take. Suddenly, the problem that felt overwhelming becomes a map you can follow. Another powerful structure is the cause-effect framework. Instead of guessing why something happened, break it into cause, effect, evidence, alternatives. Most people stop after the first cause they notice, but strong thinkers look for deeper causes. They understand that surface-level explanations are rarely accurate. Asking, "What caused this?" once gives you noise. Asking it 3 times gives you truth. Then there is the 3-option rule, a mental structure used by military strategists, negotiators, and decision-makers. Whenever you face a choice, force yourself to create 3 options. The obvious option, the alternative option, and the smart option built from analysis. The brain loves binaries. Yes, no, stay, go, act, wait. But binaries trap thinking. 3 options expand it. 3 options reveal creativity. 3 options reduce panic and increase control. To integrate structure into your daily thinking, practice slowing your mental pace. Not your life pace, your thought pace. People think too quickly for their own good. The faster the thought, the higher the chance of inaccuracy. Structured thinkers don't allow speed to dictate quality. They think with intention, they think in sequence, they think in frameworks. But structure begins with awareness. Ask yourself, is my mind stacking thoughts or scattering them? Am I solving the core issue or circling the symptoms? Is this problem complicated, or am I making it complicated? These questions pull you out of mental chaos and into clarity. Now practice the habit that strengthens structured thinking. Chunking. Chunking means grouping similar ideas together so the mind can process them more easily. Your brain is not designed to handle 50 pieces of raw information, but it can handle 5 clusters of 10 or 3 clusters of 15. Chunking turns overwhelming into manageable. It shrinks the impossible into the solvable. Then take structure into communication. Before you speak, organize your thoughts. Most people talk in spirals instead of lines. They jump backward and forward. They confuse themselves while confusing everyone around them. Structured communication builds credibility. When your words follow a clear sequence, point, proof, action, people listen, people believe, people follow. The same applies to self-talk. Your internal dialogue must be structured. If not, your thoughts argue with each other. Instead of thinking, "This is too much," structure it. What exactly is too much? What part can I control? What step can I take in the next hour? Suddenly, panic becomes progress. Structure turns emotional overwhelm into strategic calm. So, at the end of every day, refine your structure with 3 reflection prompts. What thought pattern was chaotic today? How could I have structured it better? What framework would have made this easier? These questions train your mind to prefer order over noise. They strengthen your cognitive discipline. They build mental architecture that supports clarity rather than confusion. Because the real danger in life is not complexity. The real danger is facing complexity with an unstructured mind. A structured mind thinks with precision. A structured mind makes decisions others avoid. A structured mind sees the path when others only see the problem. Build structure, and you will build intelligence. Build intelligence, and you will build power. Because clarity is not an accident. Clarity is engineered. Break the noise. Stack the truth. Create order. Think with structure. That is how you rise above mental chaos. That is how you outsmart complexity. That is how you win. Chapter 7. Anticipate outcomes. Think ahead. Before life forces. Most people don't get overwhelmed because life is unpredictable. They get overwhelmed because they never learn to think ahead. They live in reaction mode. They wait for problems to appear before preparing. They wait for consequences to hit before paying attention. They wait for pressure to arrive before strengthening their mind. And because they only respond after the damage is done, life always feels like it's one step ahead of them. You cannot win while always reacting. You win by anticipating. The painful truth is that most people already experience patterns. They just don't recognize them as patterns. They repeat the same mistakes with different faces. They enter the same conflicts in different relationships. They face the same setbacks in different jobs. They get blindsided by problems that were predictable months before, and they keep asking, why does this keep happening to me? When the better question is, why didn't I see this coming? The answer is simple. They never trained the skill of foresight. Foresight is not prediction. It's preparation. It's the ability to recognize early signals, understand long-term consequences, and position yourself intelligently before the pressure hits. Strong thinkers do not merely solve the present, they prepare for the future version of the present. They don't wait for chaos to force clarity. They use clarity to prevent chaos. Picture two people standing in the same storm. One person panics because the winds caught them off guard. The other expected the storm because they saw the signs long before it arrived. The shift in the wind, the darkening sky, the sudden stillness in the air. The storm hit both people equally, but only one prepared. That one walks through storms others are destroyed by. The difference is anticipation. To think ahead, the first skill you must develop is situational awareness. Most people only notice what is obvious. They miss the subtle shifts, the quiet signs, because their mind is busy reacting to the surface. Awareness means paying attention not to what is loud, but to what is consistent. Not to what shocks you, but to what repeats. Not to what people say, but to what they eventually do. Strong thinkers ask, what direction is this moving toward? Weak thinkers ask, what is happening right now? When you focus only on the present moment, you become a prisoner of it. When you focus on the direction of the present moment, you start understanding the future. The next pillar of anticipation is understanding cause and consequence. Every decision creates a chain reaction. Every word spoken sets a tone. Every habit compounds. Every emotion influences behavior. Most people see only the first step. They don't consider the second or the third. They choose what feels good now and pay for it later. They choose what relieves pressure now and feel trapped by it later. You must train your mind to always ask, and then what? If you take this job, then what? If you avoid this conversation, then what? If you say yes to this commitment, then what? If you keep this habit, then what? If you ignore this red flag, then what? And then what is the question that saves careers, relationships, reputation, time, energy, and opportunity. It pulls you away from emotional impulse and into strategic vision. Now, add another layer, scenario thinking. This is the mental framework used by military leaders, negotiators, analysts, and elite performers. It is the practice of creating 3 scenarios whenever you face anything important. The realistic scenario, the optimistic scenario, the challenging scenario. Most people only plan for the best case outcome because they're emotionally attached to what they want. They get blindsided by the worst case because they never prepared for it. But scenario thinking doesn't create fear. It creates strength. It builds confidence because it eliminates surprise. When you've mentally rehearsed multiple futures, the present becomes easier to navigate. The powerful part is this. You don't need to predict perfectly. You just need to stop being surprised. Another tool of anticipation is if-then mapping. This is simple but transformative. For every situation that matters, prepare an if-then response. If they react emotionally, then I stay calm. If the plan shifts, then I adapt without panic. If this risk happens, then I execute Plan B. If this opportunity opens, then I move immediately. If then trains your brain to stay in choice mode, not panic mode. It eliminates hesitation. It builds mental readiness. It prepares you to respond with intelligence instead of instinct. But anticipation isn't just logical. It's emotional, and emotional foresight is the skill most people lack. You must learn to predict your own emotional patterns. What triggers me? What shuts me down? What makes me lose clarity? What makes me overreact? What kind of pressure makes me careless? When you understand your emotional patterns, you don't walk blind into situations that destabilize you. You enter prepared, you enter grounded, you enter aware of how your mind might distort your thinking under pressure. Anticipation also involves studying other people, not to judge them, but to understand them. Humans are predictable. Patterns repeat. When someone shows consistent inconsistency, believe it. When someone avoids responsibility, expect more avoidance. When someone disrespects boundaries, they will do it again unless something changes. Anticipation is not cynicism. It's realism calibrated by pattern recognition. At the end of each day, strengthen your foresight with 3 reflection prompts. What surprised me today that shouldn't have? What did I ignore that I should have paid attention to? What pattern is emerging that I need to prepare for? These questions sharpen your awareness. They turn hindsight into foresight. They transform the past into a training tool for the future. Because the people who stay ahead in life are not lucky. They're prepared. They didn't avoid challenges. They expected them. They didn't avoid setbacks. They strategized for them. They didn't avoid complexity. They built mental frameworks to navigate it. Anticipation gives you power. Power gives you calm. Calm gives you clarity. And clarity gives you control. Think ahead. Prepare early. See the storm before it arrives. This is how you stop reacting. This is how you become unshakable. This is how you outsmart any situation. Chapter 8. Expose your blind spots. See what your mind doesn't want you to see. You are not limited by what you know. You are limited by what you don't know. That's the danger of blind spots. They are invisible until they cost you something. They shape your decisions without your awareness. They influence your reactions without your permission. They become patterns that repeat in your life because you never saw the truth behind them. Blind spots are the hidden forces that sabotage great intentions. Most people believe their perspective is complete. They think they understand their behavior, their strengths, their flaws, their triggers, their relationships, their patterns. But if perspective were complete, mistakes wouldn't repeat, pain wouldn't recycle, lessons wouldn't return disguised as new problems. The reason life keeps teaching the same lesson is simple. You haven't seen the part of yourself or the situation that truly needed to change. The pain of blind spots is subtle but powerful. They don't hurt you suddenly, they hurt you slowly. They show up as misjudged people, misread situations, wrong explanations, unresolved conflicts, and recurring disappointments. And because you can't see the root, you blame circumstances, luck, timing, or other people. But the truth is this: the part of the problem you're not seeing is always the part that controls you. Blind spots are not flaws. They are unexamined truth. And unexamined truths shape your reality. The principle behind mastering blind spots is straightforward. You must learn to see from angles your mind naturally avoids. Your mind avoids them because blind spots are uncomfortable. Seeing them requires humility, honesty, self-confrontation, and the courage to realize you were wrong about something. But this discomfort is what separates average thinkers from powerful thinkers. The strongest minds don't fear their blind spots. They hunt them. Picture this. You're driving a car with a blind spot. You check your mirrors, everything looks clear, so you begin to change lanes, and suddenly a horn blasts. You jerk back into your lane, heart racing. You never saw the car, even though it was right next to you. That car existed whether you saw it or not. Blind spots don't disappear because you ignore them. They disappear because you find new ways to see. Your mind works the same way. To expose your blind spots, the first step is reverse thinking, the ability to question your automatic conclusions. When you feel certain about something, ask, what if the opposite is true? This doesn't mean the opposite is true, but the question itself breaks your brain out of rigid thinking. Certainty locks your mind. Curiosity frees it. Your next tool is root cause analysis. Most people treat symptoms, not origins. They solve the part of the problem they can see, ignoring the hidden layer beneath it. But if the root stays unchanged, the problem returns, as it always does. Ask yourself, what is the engine underneath this? What is the behavior, fear, or belief that keeps producing this outcome? Shallow thinking creates temporary solutions. Deep thinking creates transformation. Another powerful method for uncovering blind spots is asking for external perspective. Not from everyone, but from people who are honest, observant, and emotionally neutral. We all have behaviors we don't notice, tones we don't hear, reactions we justify, and patterns we normalize. But others see what we hide from ourselves. And hearing the truth from someone who sees clearly is uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. The rule is simple. If 3 people who don't know each other say the same thing about you, it's not an opinion. It's a blind spot. But the deepest blind spots are emotional. These are the areas of life you avoid thinking about because they threaten your identity. The unresolved wound you pretend is healed. The insecurity you disguise as confidence. The fear you mask with control. The need you bury under independence. These blind spots shape behavior in ways you don't recognize. And this is the uncomfortable truth. The blind spot you refuse to face becomes the pattern that rules your life. To understand emotional blind spots, ask, what emotion do I judge in myself the most? What truth makes me defensive? What compliment makes me uncomfortable? What criticism makes me overreact? These questions reveal the parts of yourself that need attention, not judgment, but understanding. Now apply blind spot detection to relationships. Most conflict happens not because people are wrong, but because they are seeing from different angles. You see intention, they see impact. You see fairness, they see imbalance. You see logic, they see emotion. You see the past, they see the present. A relationship improves instantly when both sides are willing to say, there is something I'm not seeing yet. This simple shift prevents countless arguments, misunderstandings, and hurt feelings. Next, learn to identify blind spots in environments. Every system, workplace, team, family, partnership, has weaknesses only visible from certain positions. If you always view things from the same angle, you only understand a fraction of the situation. The strongest thinkers seek multiple perspectives, not because they're unsure, but because they're wise. Curiosity is the antidote to blind spots. But awareness is not enough. You must integrate it into daily practice. At the end of each day, ask 3 reflection questions that sharpen your insight. What surprised me today, and why did I not see it coming? What reaction of mine felt stronger than the situation deserved? What pattern am I repeating that I keep explaining away? These questions expose the edges of your awareness, the spots where clarity fades. Because the greatest limitation is the one you cannot see. Blind spots do not disappear by avoiding them. They disappear by shining light on them. They disappear by questioning your assumptions. They disappear by challenging your certainty. They disappear by letting truth matter more than comfort. When you expose your blind spots, you expand your intelligence. When you expand your intelligence, you expand your choices. When you expand your choices, you expand your life. See what your mind doesn't want to see. Look where you don't usually look. Challenge the story before the story controls you. This is how you evolve as a thinker. This is how you protect your future. This is how you outsmart any situation. Chapter 9. Make smart decisions. Under pressure. Choose with clarity, not panic. Pressure doesn't change your decision-making ability. Pressure exposes it. Most people believe they make bad decisions because the situation was too intense, too emotional, or too unpredictable. But the truth is harder to accept. Pressure did not create the mistake. Pressure only revealed the weakness in their thinking. A stressed mind collapses into instinct. A trained mind rises into clarity. Pressure magnifies your habits. If you rush when you're uncertain, you'll rush faster under stress. If you avoid conflict when things feel tense, you'll avoid even more when the stakes grow. If you make emotional decisions in calm moments, you will make even more emotional decisions in chaotic ones. Pressure does not invent new behaviors. It amplifies the ones already inside you. That's why learning to make smart decisions under pressure is not optional. It is the difference between repeating the same mistakes and rising to the next level of your life. The first truth you must accept is this: the worst decisions are made to escape discomfort, not to solve the problem. People say yes because they fear disappointing someone. They say no because they fear taking a risk. They walk away because they fear vulnerability. They hold on because they fear being alone. They react quickly because silence makes them anxious. They procrastinate because starting makes them nervous. Most decisions are emotional shortcuts disguised as logic. Pressure simply hides the disguise. But there is a principle that separates reactive thinkers from strategic thinkers. Decisions must be made in truth, not emotion. Emotion gives data, but not direction. Emotion shows what matters, but not what is correct. Emotion signals danger, desire, fear, or hope, but it doesn't provide strategy. Strategy requires clarity. Picture two people facing the same high-stakes decision. One can't breathe. Their thoughts race. They catastrophize. Every option feels like a threat. They are choosing from fear, not intelligence. The other pauses. They step back mentally. They detach long enough to evaluate instead of react. They understand the emotion without becoming it. They choose with accuracy. One is driven by panic. The other is driven by clarity. The difference is training. To make smart decisions under pressure, the first skill you need is mental separation. You must separate the moment from the meaning. The moment might feel urgent, but urgency is not the same as importance. Most urgent decisions collapse under analysis because urgency is often manufactured by fear, not reality. Strong thinkers delay interpretation long enough to gather truth. They ask, what is the actual situation, not the emotional version of it? This single question prevents countless mistakes. Next, develop the 3 consequences rule. This rule forces your mind to slow down and analyze impact instead of reacting blindly. Before choosing, ask yourself, what are the consequences in 3 hours? What are the consequences in 3 days? What are the consequences in 3 years? Short-term emotion always produces short-sighted decisions. Long-term thinking produces long-term wins. This rule reveals whether a choice is strategic or impulsive. It exposes whether you're protecting your comfort or your future. It clarifies whether you're acting from courage or fear. Then, use the decision triangle formula, a mental structure that keeps your judgment grounded even when your emotions are not. Every decision must consider 3 angles. 1. The facts. What is undeniably true? 2. The options. What choices actually exist? 3. The outcomes. What happens next for each option? people make bad decisions because they skip the first angle, exaggerate the second, and ignore the third. Pressure collapses thinking into instinct. Structure expands thinking into wisdom. Another critical tool for thinking under pressure is scenario filtering. This is different from scenario planning. Scenario filtering asks, what would I choose if I were not afraid? What would I choose if I were not rushed? What would I choose if the past didn't influence me? What would I choose if I believed I could handle the consequences? These questions filter out emotional contamination. They expose the answer that comes from truth rather than trauma. Now, train yourself to remain grounded during pressure spikes. When you feel your mind tightening, when the heart speeds up, when the thoughts repeat, when the world feels smaller, use the pause. The pause is where intelligence begins. One calm breath can prevent a bad decision. One silent moment can prevent a conflict. One step back can prevent a mistake that takes years to fix. Pressure wants speed. Wisdom wants space. And you cannot choose well without creating space for thinking. Next, practice the red-blue lens. This technique helps you evaluate whether your decision is coming from the red mind, emotional, reactive, defensive, or the blue mind, calm, strategic, objective. Ask, is this a red response or a blue response? If it is red, delay. If it is blue, decide. This distinction alone saves relationships, careers, money, and opportunity. Another powerful discipline is the minimum effective decision. This means asking, what is the smallest decision I can make right now that moves me forward without locking me into a path? People panic because they think every decision has to be final. But most decisions can be incremental. Small, smart steps prevent big, stupid mistakes. And at the center of pressure-tested decision-making is this rule. Never decide from fear. Fear is useful for survival, not strategy. Fear exaggerates risk, shrinks opportunity, and distorts perception. Strong thinkers evaluate fear, but do not obey it. Fear is a data point, not a dictator. At the end of each day, strengthen your decision-making skill with 3 reflection prompts. What decision today was driven by emotion more than logic? What decision today should have been slowed down? What decision today moved me closer to who I want to become? These questions create self-awareness, which creates better decisions, which creates a better life. Because decision-making is not just a skill. It is the steering wheel of your future. A person who cannot decide under pressure cannot lead. A person who cannot decide under pressure cannot grow. A person who cannot decide under pressure cannot outsmart the moment. But a person who can choose with clarity, even in the heat of the moment, becomes unstoppable. Calm thinking, long-term vision, strategic judgment. This is how you make smart decisions when everything feels intense. This is how you take control back from pressure. This is how you outsmart any situation. Chapter 10. Think like a long-term strategist. Win the decade, not the moment. Most people lose not because they are incapable, but because they think too short. They chase the next hour, the next reaction, the next feeling, the next win. They trade long-term power for short-term comfort. A short-term thinker survives. A long-term thinker dominates. And this is the final skill of a trained mind. The ability to think beyond the immediate moment, beyond the emotion, beyond the instinct. To think in terms of years, not minutes. To build instead of react. To choose actions that compound instead of actions that soothe. To stop fighting for the moment and start fighting for the life you truly want. The painful truth is this. Every major problem in life comes from short-term thinking. People stay in bad relationships because they want to avoid discomfort today instead of building freedom tomorrow. They avoid difficult conversations because tension today feels worse than clarity tomorrow. They sabotage opportunities because fear in the present feels stronger than growth in the future. They quit early because struggle in the moment feels heavier than reward in the long run. Short-term thinking is comfortable. Long-term thinking is powerful. The principle behind long-term strategy is simple. Think in decades. Act in days. This is how leaders think. This is how winners think. This is how anyone who breaks average thinking thinks. Picture two people with the same dream. One wants results now. They rush. They panic. They compare themselves to others. They quit when results don't come quickly. They mistake speed for success. The other moves with intention. They understand that consistency beats intensity. They build systems. They build habits. They build skills. They play a long game while others burn out in a short one. The difference isn't talent. It's time horizon. To build a long-term strategic mindset, you must begin with vision. Not dreams, not wishes, not vague desires. Vision is the ability to see your future self clearly enough that your present decisions begin to align with it. Vision tells you what is worth suffering for and what isn't. Vision tells you what to ignore. Vision tells you what to prioritize. Ask yourself, what does the strongest version of me look like in 10 years? This is not fantasy, it is direction. Once your vision is defined, you must create filters. Filters determine what you say yes to and what you say no to. They eliminate overwhelm because you no longer evaluate choices based on emotion. You evaluate them based on alignment. If a decision moves you toward your long-term self, it gets a yes. If it doesn't, it gets a no. No matter how tempting. Filters turn chaos into clarity. They protect your future from your impulses. Next comes the discipline of compounding behavior. Most people underestimate how small actions accumulate over time. They believe massive change requires massive effort. But long-term thinkers understand that consistent micro-actions create exponential results. 5 minutes a day builds mastery. A small conversation builds trust. One disciplined choice builds momentum. Short-term thinkers ask, how fast can I get there? Long-term thinkers ask, how far can I go if I refuse to stop? To adopt this mindset, train yourself to look beyond the immediate reward. When you feel tempted by distraction, ask, will this matter in 5 years? Most of what feels urgent won't matter in 5 months. Long-term thinking removes noise. Then strengthen your strategy with reverse engineering. Start with the end. Work backward. Identify steps. Identify skills. Identify habits. Identify milestones. This transforms overwhelming goals into actionable maps. It forces clarity. It eliminates guesswork. It shapes your path. But a long-term strategist doesn't just plan. They adapt. Rigidity kills progress. Adaptability sustains it. You must expect setbacks. You must expect emotional dips. You must expect resistance. A long-term thinker doesn't crumble when timelines change. They adjust the timeline, not the vision. They pivot, not quit. They refine, not collapse. Adaptation is not weakness. It is intelligence in motion. Now integrate delayed gratification, one of the strongest predictors of long-term success. Most people fail here because they confuse craving with necessity. They act on urges that disappear in days while sacrificing outcomes that would transform their life. Delayed gratification is not about suffering. It's about choosing substance over stimulation. The question is not, what do I want right now? The question is, what will I value later? This shift alone separates those who stay stuck from those who rise. Next, strengthen emotional intelligence around long-term decisions. Many people break their own results because they expect progress to feel good. But long-term achievement rarely feels good in the beginning. Progress feels boring. Repetition feels tiring. Consistency feels unglamorous. But these feelings are signs of alignment, not failure. A long-term thinker does not require enthusiasm to stay disciplined. They require purpose. At the end of each day, ask yourself 3 grounding questions to realign your long-term strategy. What action today will still matter years from now? What distraction today stole time from my future? What is one step I must take tomorrow to move closer to the decade I want? These questions pull you out of the short-term fog and anchor you into your long-term clarity. Because long-term thinking is not just about success. It is about stability. It is about identity. It is about becoming the architect of your life instead of reacting to it. A mind that thinks long-term becomes immune to short-term noise. It outlasts chaos. It outlives fear. It outperforms inconsistency. Think beyond the moment. Think beyond the emotion. Think beyond the noise. Build for the decade. Act for the day. Win for the life ahead of you. That is how long-term strategists rise. That is how they stay ahead. That is how they outsmart any situation. The mind you build becomes the life you live. Your mind is no longer the same mind that started this journey. Not because you suddenly became smarter, but because you became more aware, more structured, more disciplined, and more intentional. You've sharpened the way you observe, the way you question, the way you separate truth from emotion, the way you notice patterns, and the way you choose under pressure. You've started building the mental architecture that strong thinkers rely on, not for show, not for ego, but for mastery. And mastery of the mind is mastery of life. Throughout these chapters, you've learned that thinking is not something that just happens. Thinking is a skill. Thinking is a craft. Thinking is a muscle. And if you don't train it, the world will train it for you through noise, pressure, emotion, habits, assumptions, and blind spots. But when you do train it, you become someone who cannot be easily fooled, pushed, manipulated, or broken. You've learned to observe deeper than the surface. You've learned to challenge your first interpretation instead of worshipping it. You've learned to dismantle problems until only truth remains. You've learned to question sharply, think structurally, and anticipate intelligently. You've learned to separate emotion from analysis, so your decisions remain stable even when your feelings are not. Each of these skills is powerful on its own. Together, they form a mind that can outsmart almost any situation. But remember this: none of these skills work if they remain concepts. They only work when they become habits. Habits of attention, habits of inquiry, habits of clarity, habits of long-term thinking, habits of calm reasoning even when everything around you is loud. Your life changes, not when you learn something new, but when you think differently about what you already know. As you move forward, keep the deeper message of this audiobook with you. You don't need a perfect mind. You need a trained mind. A trained mind does not avoid emotion. It understands it. A trained mind does not escape pressure. It prepares for it. A trained mind does not react. It responds. A trained mind does not assume. It investigates. A trained mind does not chase shortcuts. It builds structure. A trained mind does not fear the future. It anticipates it. You have seen how powerful your thinking becomes when you slow down enough to see clearly, question deeply, and choose intelligently. Thinking well is not a luxury. It is a responsibility to yourself. Because the quality of your mind determines the quality of your life. Not your circumstances, not your upbringing, not your luck, your mind. Every breakthrough in your future will come from your ability to think. Not harder, but better. Every relationship will improve when you can separate your feelings from the facts. Every opportunity will expand when you can anticipate outcomes instead of reacting blindly. Every challenge will shrink when you can break it into its simplest truths. Every decision will strengthen your path when you choose based on clarity instead of panic. The world respects the mind that can remain steady while others shake. The world respects the mind that can stay objective when emotions rise. The world respects the mind that can navigate complexity with simplicity. The world respects the mind that chooses long-term value over short-term relief. And now you're building that mind. This is not the end of the journey. This is the beginning of your second mind. The stronger mind, the clearer mind, the calmer mind, the more strategic mind. The version of you who doesn't need every answer immediately because they know how to find answers. The version of you who doesn't collapse under confusion because they know how to create structure. The version of you who doesn't fear uncertainty because they know how to anticipate. The version of you who doesn't crumble under emotion because they know how to separate it from analysis. Your future demands a powerful thinker, and that thinker is you. So as you step away from this audiobook, remember the most important lesson of all. You don't rise to the level of your hopes. You rise to the level of your thinking. Think with depth. Think with discipline. Think with structure. Think with vision. Think with courage, because your mind is not just a tool. Your mind is your strategy. Your mind is your shield. Your mind is your compass. Your mind is your advantage. Train it every day. Sharpen it every day. Strengthen it every day. And watch how the life you once hoped for becomes the life you intentionally create.